Hey guys, how are you all doing today? My name is Jordan McCracken-Foster, and I am one of the teaching artists here at ArtPro, and I am here today with fellow teaching artist Alex Rowe. And today we are going to be discussing how to get art commissions. So while we're on that topic, if you want to make your artistic weakness your strength, and then you will want to check out our website where we have lots of free content for critiques and tutorials. And for our first question for Alex, I want to ask, where's this thing? Sorry. I want to ask, can you remember the first time you ever took a commission?
Yeah. There's the first like commission out of school, which was one thing. But I guess the first real one was my friend Bryce in high school. He paid me $1 to draw a portrait of him in math class. And so I did it. So that was my first one. How about you?
Mine, so when I was in like the fourth or fifth grade, everyone was really interested in having these businesses. And so the kids would do is they would like sell pencils for like $1 and stuff like that. I don't know where we would even get this kind of money, or they would trade like pencils for erasers and stuff, and everyone had one. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have my own art studio, art company. And so I had a binder with all my drawings, and it'd have like Sonic the Hedgehog and Tarzan and Bugs Bunny and Harry Potter and all this stuff. And I would walk around the school, the yard with a binder of my art, and I would go and be like, "Hey, you want some art?" And I just take orders and I write it down. And I had employees, and I would take like a quarter or something like that. And I think only like 4 people ever got anything, even though I took like 10 or 15 orders.
That's that first lesson of taking too many commissions than you have time for. That's
I was like 10.
yeah. I mean, I did the same thing at that same age, but with Pokemon cards, just walking around with the binder, just trade them up.
Oh heck, I feel you, man. So
Yeah.
so let me ask, what do you think are some of the benefits to taking a commission?
First one would definitely be like monetarily. I'd say it sounds so simple, but it's like I think of commissions as like there's like what are those graphs where there's 3 points, like a triangle, and where there's either income or you have fun with the project or it builds your portfolio. And if it doesn't fulfill at least one of those three, then I just don't take the commission, period. But then it begs the question of like, if you're not making money off of it, why don't you just build your portfolio and have fun with your work by yourself? So yeah, I think those would be the 3 ways I view benefit of commission is, do I have fun with it? Am I making money off of it? And can I use it in my portfolio of the kind of work I want to be doing?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all those points. I mean, obviously, like everyone wants to make more money. I don't care who you are. Everyone wants a little bit more money in their life. But I also think one of the really good things about taking commissions is you get to learn how to be more self-reliant. You can figure out how to build a schedule. You can figure out what you are more comfortable with, and you figure out your own boundaries. So there's a lot of those things that they're never written on a commission sheet. But when you start getting orders and people ask you for very peculiar things, it's always nice to have, some sort of parameters for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's like a really quick, I hope we bring this up a lot of times in the stream, that thing of like, if you ever don't want to do that piece, push it off to another artist who does, because that's, I think the benefit of the art community is, I can't tell you the amount of times that if I turn down a commission for whatever reason, that I'm like, oh, here's 2 or 3 other artists who I think you'd really click with. Like, and that's the best way to operate.
Yeah, actually, that brings up one of the points that we wanted to talk about was having standards for your work. And I think that's incredibly important because if there's something you don't feel comfortable with doing, like NSFW or not safe for work, then you should say that. You should feel comfortable advertising yourself as like, look, I'm not down for that. Have you ever had any sort of experience where someone asks you to do something, you're just like, nah, that's not for me?
Yeah, there was a piece where actually it was funny. I did one project for this client, and it was like a small t-shirt company wanted me to do a design. And then in the second design within the email, he included some pretty toxic and negative comments about certain classes of people. And I was like, ooh, I just got that sense of like, you're just not the kind of person I want to work with. But I kind of, you just end it with like a simple like, oh, I'm sorry, like my schedule built up, blah, blah, blah. Like I choose not to accept this piece. And I take that advice from a professor of mine in school who was asked to do some work for Camel cigarettes back in the 80s. And he was anti-smoker. Like I think he had a relative who passed away from lung cancer, but he didn't reject the job by, standing on a podium and derailing the whole company. He just said, I'm sorry, my schedule's booked. Like, thanks for asking. Because yeah, it's just that thing of, it's so much easier to just be gracious when someone is not. Yeah. But yeah, so I think that's the best example I have.
Yeah, for me, there's been a number of times where people have asked me to do some sort of commission that I wasn't comfortable with. I'll let you guys in a little story that I have actually. Maybe like 2 years ago, I had a friend of mine. We're still friends, but her sister was on Upwork and wanted to take on a project for this guy who's creating a young adult novel. And she was a fashion designer, and she came to me asking if I could draw a template or like a pose for the character, and then she would do the clothes on top of it. I was like, okay, sure, no problem. She said we would even split the cost. And this guy sent us like a 30-page long thing of all these characters. And the thing that got my attention first was it's a young adult novel. I don't understand why you need character designs for a young adult novel because it's mostly just red. It's not like he's asking for the cover or like the little illustrations in the book. The other thing is in the document, he would rank the female characters, who were all teenagers, by the way, by the size of their boobs and of their butts. And it would say like really big or, medium to big, small, flat, like just really kind of derogatory ways to something like that. First off, it's not even necessary. Second of all, it's just really gross because you're this grown person. So I started asking a couple questions about that, and then he was like, I don't want him working on the project. There's, I'm uncomfortable now with this guy asking questions. So
that's like we gotta put a pin in that because there's that dangerous world of like that self-published realm. Because yeah, like the quick answer, if somebody like comes to you with like, I have a young adult idea, I want to get it published. My quick response is like, great. The publishing house picks the illustrator. Bye. Like, but if they want to self-publish, it's a different story. But yeah, that's what you were saying is it's Erica Young asked the question of kind of more concretely, how do you set the terms for commissions? Because kind of with your story and my story, it's both kind of like, I realize what my terms were when I bump into roadblocks. Like, it's only after I have bad interactions or bad clients that I realize like, oh, okay, this is a term that I have. So do you feel the same way where it's kind of like you learned them as you go? And if so, like, what do you think they are?
Yeah, so there are a couple things. I have my price sheet here, and on the right side, towards the middle, I basically wrote like, look, I don't do NSFW, I don't do mecha, and I don't do like gory stuff. And those were things I was just like, from the get-go, I just don't even want to do that because I don't like drawing those things. And even if you paid me, no, please don't. But there are times where people want you to do something and maybe it's out of the budget or it's something that makes you feel uncomfortable. And that's a discussion that you have to have with the client. And you have to be willing to say that because I don't think it's worth your sanity for a couple of dollars, losing your sanity for a couple of dollars.
Yeah.
If it's something that you're just not going to be excited about or something you're not going to grow by doing, a little, $50, $100 is not a big issue. It really isn't in the long run.
Totally. Yeah, like you're like remember why you're doing this, like if you're making that step to like make your income off of art, remember why you did it in the first place, to make you happy. Like the failsafe I have, it's a joke, but I really mean it, is like my line is dog portraits, never again. Like I did one dog portrait and I was miserable. I won't even paint my own dog. Like I just the price cannot be too high. I won't do it. And it's okay to have those statements that like you just put out there. And I think that depending on what they are, actually, no, yeah, I'd say that there's always a polite way in the early conversations to say to a client, like, oh, sorry, that's not the kind of work I do. But I would definitely, again, I'll recommend like pass them along to a couple other artists, which one, this is a reason to build that artist community. And two, it's a great, gracious way to walk out of it,
Yeah.
Say like, hey, I don't paint dogs. Sorry, but here are two friends of mine that love painting dogs.
That's always a great option. The other thing that I do, honestly, sometimes I'll name a ridiculously high price. you know, you know, there are some projects that maybe aren't necessarily, I have a moral problem with. I just don't want to do it. And sometimes I'll go like, okay, if it's especially if it's something that's outside of the sheet that I've already posted, I'll like charge a lot more. And if they go for it, I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess if you want to give me such and such many $100,000, whatever, okay,
Sure.
I'll hate it, but maybe this will work.
It's so funny. That reminds me of a story that I wish was mine, where it was a guest lecturer back when I was at school. And he does these beautiful, beautiful like paintings of a lot of like flowers and foliage. They're incredibly complex and phenomenal. And this was in like the 2008 like financial crisis. And he got a call to meet this guy at his mansion, like the beginning of a horror movie. And the guy calls him in and he's like, price doesn't matter. I need you to make this art. He's like, okay, what are you thinking? And the guy gets a photo print of a daisy, draws a smiley face on it in Sharpie and says, I need you to do that. It's just the weirdest thing. But he was like, sure. Like, so yeah, it was just a little bizarre. It took the guy half an hour to do this. He just did a flower with a smiley face, but it paid him a couple months rent. So you never know.
Wow. Going off of that, I just want to make sure you guys understand part of the whole commission thing is, really making sure you know what your art is worth. I know a lot of artists really struggle pricing because, and oftentimes we underprice ourselves because we don't feel like we're good enough. But in the eyes of the client, we are the bar. If they're coming to you asking you to do something for them, that means the skill level you're at is fine. And so you want to make sure that you're not underselling yourself because that's unfair to you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of that too is finding out the two ends of like, there's so many artists that underprice themselves and they could be charging a lot more. And they owe it not just to yourself, but also to the rest of the people in the field of like, no, it costs this much money to do this task.
Right.
But at the same time, I think for me personally, I had some experiences of overpricing myself. And we're talking like right out of school, eager to get commissions and interact with like people who are working in like smaller settings. Like for example, one project was for like a small poster for like a bake sale or something at a high school. And I walked out with like that mindset of like, don't overcharge. With don't undercharge. So I was like, all right, here's my contract, here's the invoice date, blah, blah, blah. And they really quickly were like, okay. And they backed out. So it's kind of know your value both positively and negatively.
Yeah, there was something that I think my mom gave me this advice. She said, if a bunch of people are coming to you for commissions, you're probably pricing yourself too low because it's just like, oh, it's $5. I can spend $5, no problem. But
Yeah.
if no one, and I mean no one is going for you, or maybe just one person, your prices are probably a little too high. And so you want to find that balance. And what I recommend is actually trying to find other artists who do similar work to you and see what they price and do a similar thing. Because what also happens is when you price it similarly to other artists around you, it becomes more fair for everyone in that circle. Because let's say that Alex and I are at the same level in terms of drawing, right? If I price myself way lower and he priced himself way higher, then the client's obviously not going to want to spend more money. So I'm going to get all those clients, and it's going to screw Alex over and all the other artists who are charging a good price. So you want to make sure you're balanced in whatever you do.
Totally. And that's quick shout out before this comment is like, that's a great way to meet artists you don't know, like on Instagram and social media. Just message like, hey, I'm an artist as well. I'm just curious, like, how do you price your work? Because I'm new and starting out. And if you frame it like that, like that's a question to get comments back to.
Yeah.
So Neil asks a very simple but very difficult question of how do you get clients, especially online? And it's funny because the online part is tricky where a lot of my clients have been from people that I've met. Like in my day job working in a coffee shop, meeting people, showing them my work, or friends, acquaintances, relatives of those people. And then it's spooky how many people know each other, where a friend's relative knows an art director of this place. Like it's wild. So I would say first, a lot of my commissions come from offline. And then honestly, a few people trickle in through Instagram. But how about you, Jordan? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, a lot of my clients have also just been through friends or family friends or whatever. But the one thing I will say is the idea of a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And what I mean
Mm,
by that is no one's going to know if you do that you do commissions if you don't tell people that. Very rarely will you get someone who wants you to do work for them, but most of the time when that happens and they just randomly ask you and you never advertise yourself, it 9 times out of 10 is a project that you don't want to do. I don't know why that is, but every single time that's happened is a project I'm like, oh no, please go away, and I try and find some excuse to not do it.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but
and that.
okay.
Oh no, I was just going to say that brings up what we were saying earlier of like you don't have to put yourself through a job or a client you don't want to deal with. And if you keep getting jobs you don't want to do, yeah, like Jordan, you might have to rethink how you're advertising yourself.
Yeah. There was a time, I think I was a sophomore in school, and our drawing teacher was saying, uh, there was a particular assignment that we did that was just like hell. It was just really, it took so many hours and it was awful for most of the students. And he was saying, and no matter how good the drawing was, he said, if you don't like doing this kind of work, do not put it in your portfolio because
Mhm.
you put in your portfolio and you advertise yourself as being able to do this, guess what people are going to ask you to do from now on. So
Yeah.
that's one of those big things you got to be careful for.
Oh yeah. And there's absolutely. There was a question by M Designs where kind of I think in relation to your price sheet of if I were to make my own price sheet, where would I keep it online? Also, where would you keep your price sheet to reference off of? Yeah, what do you since you have one so well prepared, like where does your price sheet live?
Well, mine's on Instagram, and so let me see. I'll pull it up here. Um, yeah, I just posted mine on Instagram because that's where I'm most active. Uh, and anyone who sees my work is just gonna, I assume, will follow me on Instagram. I also have an ArtStation account, but that's more for like professional portfolio type stuff. Everyone on there is working in the industry. They don't always take commissions. So that's what I would do. I just post it somewhere where someone can see it. And if you're in the park or something and someone's asking what you charge, you can always send them the image and just say, hey, hit me up if you're interested.
Yeah, that brings up a really good point to being aware of what audience is looking at which sources. Like Jenny.01 had this point of I do commissions on Facebook mostly, but Instagram can be good but very competitive. And that kind of brings up that thought where kind of like what you were saying, where of some of the work that's mostly industry people, they're not really looking for commission. It's more to display the work to get further jobs within the profession. You don't really offer commission deals on that site. Whereas Instagram's a lot more non-artists, people looking to purchase art and get art. And with that comment too, it brings up that thing of think about where you're putting it. Where Facebook does have an older demographic now than it did 5 years ago. And a typical assumption is that the older demographics are willing to spend more money or any money on art.
Right. It's really good to find your audience because, as Alex mentioned, Facebook has a slightly older audience now, but Instagram is, there's so many people who are in their teens and 20s. And if you're doing stuff that appeals to them, like anime or, or like an Avengers character or something like that, that's a really good place to be because that's everywhere. And, go where the clients are as best you can. And honestly, with all the advice we're giving, a lot of getting clients is also just kind of luck. You could just be minding your own business and you get a random message saying, "Hey, I really like your work. Can you do this project for me?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is tough because I've got two questions that are both really good. We'll just start with Angelic Enigma. How do you deal with clients who shall we say, go sideways partway through or are very difficult? The scary customers. And yeah, I think what Angelic Enigma is talking about is like where a kind of midway through the project, they get very intense or it kind of changes. So hits that point where for me, it goes with like that contract at the very beginning, get it in writing so that if things go south or you have to bail on the job or they release you from the job, you have it in writing of what happens. Like, oh, I did this much work, you paid me the deposit, we're good.
Right.
What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is one of those times where maintaining professionalism is key because so what I do, for example, when I get commissions, I'll send them all to my email. I don't even deal with them on Instagram. I just send them straight to my email because one, that tells me how serious they are, and two, it's just easier for me to go back and check messages. And if there's some sort of discrepancy or there's some sort of misunderstanding, I will just say, "Hey, I think we need to work this out. I understood the project as this, and you're telling me you want this." There are situations where I've asked for more money because they completely changed on me. They changed what they wanted, or they're asking for way too many nitpicky changes that aren't worth the price anymore. There's also something called a kill fee, where let's say sometimes people just, for whatever reason, you're halfway through or even done with the project, and they say, I don't like it. You should still get paid for the work that you did. It shouldn't matter just because they don't like it doesn't mean you didn't spend all those hours working, maybe even till 1 o'clock in the morning or something. So always keep.
Totally. Yeah, that's the thing too, where it's also on your end as the artist, where that's why I always said, sketches, color studies, works in progress. So it never surprises them. Because think of it too, like we're not always the victim of a bad client. You have to think, am I being a good professional artist to this person who's paying me to make this product? Am I showing them what they're expecting to show? So I get a lot from clients where they say when the work is done, like, oh, this is such a cool like surprise at the end, where it's like at the back of my mind, it's like, but you knew basically what was coming. You got the sketches, you got the composition, the color studies. Yeah. There's a really good important question from Nina Marie Uckman. How should the shipping the work out to your client go? And that's a big point that's often overlooked, I think. Jordan, do you have any initial thoughts on that one?
To be honest, I don't have experience with that because that's one of the things I put in my commissions is it's just going to be digital work because I didn't want to have to deal with that, like going to the post office and figuring out like, oh, if it gets damaged and blah, blah, blah. And, I always worried about that. So I was like, I'd rather just send an email. That's just, so I don't know. I think you would probably be the better person to answer this one.
Yeah, like it's, and the consummate professionalism has to continue until it's hanging in the client's home. And it doesn't cost a lot of money to go that extra step where, if they never roll your art, like, if they get your art and it's rolled up in a tube and it's like duct taped together, they're going to kind of start asking like, wait, I spent how much on this? We're talking protect it from the mail, 2 pieces of thicker cardboard taped together nicely. sorry if I'm nitpicking on it, but it's like, yeah, cut it cleanly. Don't just tear the cardboard. Uh, Make a nice portfolio before you put it in its shipping envelope. And I always write like a handwritten thank you note with your business card inside the commission piece. Like yeah, it's just one of those things to show that truth of how much you really appreciate getting that job.
Nice. Yeah, now I learned something. I had no idea. Now if I ever switch, I'll call Alex and make sure I'm doing it right.
It's yeah, well, and it's funny. I learned that from receiving art that I like in myself commissioned, where like I as a working artist and then getting a piece of art where it's like, oh, this is cool. This artist stamped this piece of cardboard with their logo. That's pretty slick. Like, you kind of learn ideas from others.
With some class, I like that.
Let's see. There's a great comment from Moises. What about format? Have you guys talked about how format affects the commission? That's interesting. I'm not sure if it's referring to like the format of the piece, like you were saying, digital, or for me, if it's like traditional, or if that's like kind of size or style. But yeah, let's go with like size and format of the piece. On your pricing sheet, you have like sketches, line drawings, color.
Yeah, the basic rule of thumb is the more time I spend, the more it's going to be. The more detailed it is, the more it's going to be, and that's just the simplest way for me to think about it. I actually just got an email today about someone who wanted like they said they wanted a logo in the email, and then in the photo reference that they sent of what they want, they sent like a highly rendered painting. And so, because if that's what they want, and they still want me to do it, I'm gonna have to charge way more than what a simple line drawing would be, just because it takes so much more thought process of thinking, and it's gonna take hours to do. You know, so that's kind of the rule of thumb. Just figure out estimate how long it's gonna take you, and go based off of that.
Yeah. And that's funny too, because so many people that like, so obviously like a lot of commissions that you'll get are going to be from non-artists, and non-artists typically make money by the hour, whereas artists make pieces or commission money by the piece usually. And so it's tough to translate to clients like a time frame, or a lot of clients will want like an inch by inch, like, okay, well, how much does it cost to like increase the size by 1 inch? And you kind of have to find a way to translate to people on their terms of like, oh no, this is like a skill that I have, this is how much it will cost to do this. And the best way I found to do that is to get experience from work you've done and say, oh, typically I charge this much. And let's see, Nani has a great question of how do you manage your cost? How do you do a financial plan? And that's when this actually has helped me get and keep a lot of jobs that I otherwise would have lost, of people that say, oh yeah, that price sounds totally fair. You're really worth that, but I can't afford that. I'm like, hey, no sweat. We can work out a system where you pay me a little bit every month, or you can divide up the payment. And it's one of those things where if you can afford to be flexible with it, it goes a long way with clients.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think being flexible is really great, because there are when you get a message from someone saying they want your work, it could be anyone behind that screen when you check your email or the phone. It could be someone down the street. It could be someone who's a lawyer, or it could be someone who works at Coca-Cola and they want a new advertisement. So you're gonna base, if it was like like a big company like Coca-Cola or whatever, I would charge a lot more than someone who's just going down the street, because I know they got money. I know Coca-Cola has money, and so think about it in that way, and just like figure out like who are you really doing the work for, and then kind of like Alex said, just find a way to work with them, because if they're coming to you, if they're really asking for you to put your time and effort into a piece that can go on their wall, or they can give to someone later on, they want to work with you. So I think you have to find a way to make it work for everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, and if you, like Jared was saying, if you come prepared to deal with Coca-Cola, then have that mindset when you're dealing with just someone who wants a piece of your art to have. Because then it it's still that thing of coming off as professional doesn't mean you come off as cold. You can just say like, oh yeah, typically I charge this, 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 and this. But look, you know what? Like you're a friend of mine. This is nice. Like, yeah, let's just do this. Like, and translating to people that you have a business plan prepared, even if they are an exception to that. Like, yeah, I do a thing where on my invoices, when I work with nonprofits that I approve of their work, um, I always leave a clause that I leave blank if I can financially afford to at this time. That's like, hey, here's a percentage off that you're allowed to take off from the price. So I have a full invoice showing the costs and fees and everything, but I leave it to the nonprofit to decide how much of a discount they get. So that's a way to show like professional business savvy about it, but you can still be compassionate about it. Uh, Tom had a great question he posed up. How do you manage how to limit the use of digital art that you sell? And Jordan, that's a good question where when you say that the art is digital, how do you put a limit on that to make sure it's not popping up on t-shirts everywhere?
Yeah, that's one of those tricky things. I mean, part of that is in trusting your client too, because if you know that they're going to be printing it, it's a lot of times what they'll do is they'll say, "I want a design for a T-shirt," and so you kind of already know, like, okay, they're trying to sell this thing and make money off it. So you can think about that and say, well, since you're going to be making money off this for a while, I'm going to charge a little bit more. If you get someone who just says, "I just like the Powerpuff Girls, and I want you to do some fan art of that for me, and I can put it on my wall," then okay, this is just for them. And so a lot of that is just asking your client what the deal is, what they're using it for. And honestly, that kind of comes up when they message you. Most clients don't go, "Can you do art for me?" and just leave it at that. They will say, usually, "Can you do a t shirt? Can you do a book cover? Can you do a character design?" or whatever the case may be.
Mhm. And here we're going to do a quick, like almost rapid fire questions because one of the comments earlier answers some of these questions we're getting now. Where first, Megan is asking, if the client agrees to pay every month in payments, when do they receive the work? At the end of the payments or before? And what if they don't follow through? And then connected, Erica is asking, do you guys use contracts when doing commissions for clients? How do you construct something like that? And so Megan's question's answered by Erica. And earlier on the stream, someone mentioned the Pricing and Ethical Guidelines Handbook. The Graphic Artist Guild Handbook, Pricing and Ethical Guidelines, as M Design says, it has contract mock-ups, it has current pricings, it has advice on making invoice and contracts, and it covers all of those things that you need to get yourself covered for cases like if they decide not to pay you.
Yeah, something else I recommend doing is when I'm working digitally, and especially if it's someone I don't know. If it's like a friend I see at school, I usually don't do this, but I watermark everything that I send to them, and I'll put like my logo like smack dab in the middle of the thing, and I put the
Mhm.
opacity really low so that you can still see that I clearly did the work and that the colors and everything are working fine. But if they were to try to, skip out on paying me, then all they get is a image with my logos in the middle of it. And for them, and the point of that is if they were to try to remove it, honestly, it would take more time and effort than it would be for me to just unclick that layer and they pay me the whole thing. That's a really good way to protect yourself.
Mhm. That's great advice. Yeah, it's surprisingly simple to do to make that. Let's see. Uh, Odysseus 48 is asking, have you ever had an incident where you charged the customer less or didn't charge them as much as you could have just to get them out of your hair?
Um, yeah, there are some of those projects where I just hate them. They're not engaging, but I only really run into that situation where I'm really stressed for finances, where I really need money, and so I don't do that as much anymore. But there have been times where I go like, man, I don't want to do it, but man, $200 could really do me some good right now. So, you know, that's a case by case basis. But yeah, the answer is a positive for me.
Yeah, I it kind of hits on for me, it's almost hits a catch-22 where like if I really need the income from the commission, I definitely wouldn't charge less. I'd charge more. Like be like, okay, you're really difficult. I need to get out of this. um, but no, yeah, that kind of to me personally, I just have to share like that's one of the reasons why I've loved my side career as a barista because it allows me that like I jokingly call it like the low income way to be selective about jobs you take, where it's like, oh, this is great. Never have to do another dog portrait again. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want to be dealing with nonsense clients, guys. You know, work with people who that are easy to work with, are easy to talk to, and you guys will figure it out. I think part of it is just getting that practice and putting your foot out there. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. There's, oh, this is a great question from Ashvir Hemraj. When taking a mission, how does one think about target market related to pricing or trying to knock out quick artworks for a higher demand? And that, oh, this is a good one. That's a good question. Yeah. How would you go for that?
Let me see. I think, hmm. I think part of it is just one, you gotta know what you're worth, like we kind of mentioned earlier, um, and not don't undersell yourself. But like, it's kind of like what we've been saying, just like find a happy medium where your work satisfies what the client wants, and they're able to make sure they meet you in the middle.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's like I got to reference again the pricing and ethical guidelines handbook, where that also it has prices of industry standards for everything from children's book, young adult, T-shirt designs, website design. So you can have like a kind of people jokingly call it the Bible that you can go to and say like, hey, this is what we should charge for this. I'm doing less or more because of numerous reasons. It's not uncommon to charge less slightly than when you're right out of school and post people that, yeah, this experience is valuable to me. Not valuable enough to do it for free, but I recognize I don't have the experience as a 25-year veteran illustrator.
Right. And hey, guys, speaking of valuable information, we have a lot of really great stuff on our Art Prof Spotify, I guess, page, channel. I don't know what you would even call it, the technical word for that is. But we have a lot of our podcasts up there for you guys to listen to. We are also on iTunes. So if you guys want to hear us talk some more about these hot topics concerning art and commissions and pricing and all that stuff, definitely want to check it out. And about 5 to 10 minutes after the stream, Alex and I will both be on Discord and we'll be in the channel post live streams where you can ask us questions that we did not get to in the stream. Or if you guys just want to talk to us and say hi, that'd be fine too. And please remember to like and subscribe to our channel. All the support really helps us. And click the bell icon for notifications for future videos. And last but not least, we want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. You guys have been so awesome, so consistent, and so supportive. And we really, really appreciate that. And our Prof would not exist without you guys. So all the support, thank you. And I know that even though Clara isn't here, she's saying thank you as well, wherever she is in the world. But all right, guys, that takes care of that for the evening. And we'll see you all next time.